Chapter 9:18. Even if Yi Buoxuan didn't say it, everyone present knew that it was definitely not a diary. What kind of decent person would write a diary? Who would write down their inner thoughts in a diary? How could they be considered as inner thoughts if they were written down? Apart from those who were truly innocent and unguarded, those experts who had reached a high position, who would write such a thing? Looking at Yi Buoxuan's sigh, Li Jiaodi couldn't help but anxiously say, "Don't keep us in suspense. What do you mean? What do you mean by coming from outside the domain?" Yi Buoxuan glanced at Li Jiaodi. Chu Xiu also glanced at Li Jiaodi. This woman really didn't know how to speak. It should be said that she didn't know what she was talking about. Yi Buoxuan was the sect master of the 6th demon sect. He was in charge of a top-notch devil Dao sect. His strength was considered one of the upper echelons even among the bright devil and hidden devil sects. And what about Li Jiaodi? Yi Buoxuan could represent the entire 6th demon sect, but Li Jiaodi couldn't represent the entire hidden devil sect. She actually dared to shout and wrangle in front of Yi Buoxuan. This was because Yi Buoxuan had a good temper. If it was Chu Xiu, he would probably have given her another slap. He paused for a moment before continuing. According to what is written on this scroll, our so-called Mahakala demon cult, to be more precise, should be the Sanskrit sect, Shiva temple, and Mahakala deity palace. Therefore, the entire Mahakala demon cult is only a branch of the Sanskrit sect. Everyone present, except for Lin Songlong, had their expressions change. If it was as Yi Buoxuan said, this was a little terrifying. Although the great Mahakala heavenly demon cult was easily annihilated by Dugu Weiwa in the past, the one who did it was Dugu Weiwa. Without Dugu Weiwa, what kind of strength would the great Mahakala heavenly demon cult have? It would definitely belong to the upper echelons of the pugilistic world. In the end, such a powerful Mahakala heavenly demon cult was actually a branch of a sect. This was simply inconceivable. Su Jing and Xiao Maha were silent. They had seen the name Sanskrit in the ancient records of their sect. Previously, they had thought that the so-called Sanskrit was another name for the ancient Buddhist sections. Now, it seemed that there was some misunderstanding. Sanskrit was just Sanskrit, an independent existence. Yi Buoxuan continued, according to this scroll, Sanskrit is located in a place called Daoyu Ocean. There, the Brahmin sect and the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha fought fiercely. Due to various reasons, the Brahmin sect was at a disadvantage. Brahma, the ruler of the Brahma temple in Sanskrit, had been found. I didn't quite understand what this word meant, but it seemed to be some sort of reversed usage of a key that would allow some people to return to the ancestral land and obtain what they needed. Then the plan was executed. The Great Black Sky Demon Cult, or rather, the Great Black Sky Deity Palace, all arrived at the ancestral grounds, but they discovered that the ancestral grounds had undergone a heaven-shaking change. Absolute heaven is pressed for time. They don't have much time left. And then? Su Jing couldn't help but ask. Yi Buoxuan pointed at the scroll and said, "That's it. You should know what happened next." The Great Black Sky Demon Cult walked out of the southern barbaric lands, and was completely destroyed by the Kunlun Devil Cult. Everyone present let out a long breath, and their eyes flickered with a strange light. There wasn't much recorded in the scroll, and because of Yi Buoxuan's translation problems, some parts were still a little unclear. But the content recorded was extremely shocking, and it was related to some secrets of the ancient Great Calamity. They didn't know about the Sanskrit, but they knew about the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha. The Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha was a top Buddhist sect in the ancient times, and this Sanskrit was able to fight against it. Although it was at a disadvantage, it was obvious that this Sanskrit was in existence on the same level as the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha. Most importantly, this incident happened 500 years ago. 500 years ago, the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha, which only existed in ancient legends, was fighting against the Sanskrit. What did this mean? It meant that the ancient Buddhist sect, the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha, still existed. At least 500 years ago, it existed in a place called the Daoyu Ocean. In fact, everyone had always been very curious about the whereabouts of the ancient sects and the group of experts after the ancient Great Calamity. However, although they were curious, they did not find any direct evidence to prove where the ancient sects had gone. There were only some scattered records. Coupled with their guesses, they could more or less come to a conclusion, and that was that a portion of the ancient sects had indeed successfully avoided the calamity. And now, the things recorded in this scroll were the most direct evidence. The so-called sky-splitting plan of the ancient great sects had indeed succeeded. They had found a place called Daluo Celestial, and from the looks of it, they were living quite well. It was very simple to come to the conclusion that they were living well. If they still had the mood to fight each other and worship Buddha, then they must be living well. If they were to become like the Green Capital, even living would be tiring. How would they still have the mood to fight and worship Buddha? Everyone present was clearly shocked by this news. The only ones who were clear-headed were Li Jiaodi and Lin Songlong. Li Jiaodi was calm because she didn't care about these things at all. To her, she didn't care about the ancient secrets and other messy things. She only cared about how much she could benefit from her line of work. As for Lin Songlong's calmness, Chu Xiu felt a little puzzled. He had always felt that from the moment they entered, Lin Songlong seemed to have known about these things in advance. What he wanted was only one thing in the great black heavenly demon cult. As long as he got that thing, everything else didn't matter. After digesting what they had just learned, they turned around and went to the other two portals to check them out. There was nothing special about the second portal. It was a small palace, and each palace had a statue of a god. There were even incense offerings on it. This place was very normal. Places like the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery had such places to worship Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Moreover, this place also indirectly proved that the Buddhist lineage had a deep connection with Sanskrit. Some of the statues were quite similar to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and protectors of the Buddhist lineage. When they stepped into the third portal, what appeared in front of them was a bronze door covered with arrays. Previously, the surrounding buildings were all built with the local black stones, but this place was actually sealed with a bronze gate. It was obvious that this was not an ordinary place. Yi Buoxuan walked over to take a look and said in a deep voice, "Master Su Jing and Master Xiaomok, it's up to you. The array laid here is a protective array. If you break it with force, it will easily cause a backlash. Both of you should be proficient in arrays. Break the array with an array and open this door." Su Jing and Xiaomok did not waste any time and immediately took action. They used some extremely simple tools to set up an array and collided with the array on the bronze door, finally destroying it. It seemed like the people from the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult had really been in a hurry. Although the portal seemed to have been built with some effort, the strength of the array was not too strong. After pushing open the door, what appeared before everyone's eyes was a place similar to a treasure vault. Everyone's eyes lit up. This was the place they were looking for. Even if the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult had been in a hurry, they must have built such a place and left their precious items here. This was so that if they carried their items with them, they would lose them or fall into the hands of others if something happened to them. Before everyone could react, Lin Songlong's figure shot out like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the treasure vault and grabbed something. This divine general of the heavenly gates had always kept a low profile. Apart from Chu Xiu, the others had almost ignored him. When they saw that Lin Songlong had made the first move, Su Jing and Xiaomok immediately acted to stop him. No matter what Lin Songlong wanted, he couldn't let Lin Songlong take the initiative. Su Jing formed a Buddhist seal, and the moment Lin Songlong landed, he took the initiative to step into a golden lotus. In an instant, he was covered by a Buddhist light. At the same time, Xiaomok chanted Buddhist scriptures. Amidst the faint sound of Buddhist chanting, a hazy Buddhist shadow descended, seemingly suppressing him. Lin Songlong snorted coldly and transformed into a huge dragon. As the dragon roared, it fought against the heavens. A powerful and terrifying fist intent tore everything apart. As the dragon roared, the golden lotus shattered and the Buddhist shadow was smashed by Lin Songlong's fist. Su Jing and Xiaomok's expressions changed. They had not expected this divine general of the heavenly gates to be so exaggerated. Even when the two of them attacked together, they were unable to stop him. Chu Xiu had originally wanted to attack as well. However, when he saw the thing that Lin Songlong was heading towards, he stopped in his tracks. There was only one thing in the direction that Lin Songlong was heading towards. It was a box with a stone on it. However, There were extremely complicated patterns on it. It looked like it had been carved by someone, but it also seemed natural. This thing was extremely familiar to Chu Xiu. It was the sky key that was currently in his dantian. The people of the heavenly gates had actually come for this thing. Previously in the illusory six realms, Kuang Shiyue had obviously come for this thing as well. The people of the heavenly gates seemed to have some sort of intelligence that allowed them to know where this thing was. Based on this deduction, Divine Lord Luo had appeared in the underworld previously for this thing as well. Lin Songlong had been talking about the heavenly gates mission. It was obvious that their mission was to collect this sky key. Previously, the key had fallen into Chu Xiu's hands, causing Kuang Shiyue's mission to fail. That was why it was Lin Songlong's turn to appear in the underworld. However, Chu Xiu was still surprised. What exactly was this key used for? At present, Chu Xiu only knew that this sky key had the ability to travel through space. It could allow him to break through the space barrier and travel back and forth to the oasis space. Now, it seemed that this sky key definitely did not have such a simple function. Could it really allow people to travel to the heavens? Chapter 919. Lin Songlong's goal in coming here had always been clear. He was here for the sky-piercing key. He had no need for anything else, nor was he interested in it. After breaking free from Su Jing and Xiao Maha's entanglement, Lin Songlong took the sky-piercing key and immediately turned to leave. This scene caused the others to be incomparably stunned. But after hesitating for a moment, no one gave chase. Su Jing and the others did not give chase because they did not know the value of this item. It did not seem worth it to fight with the divine general of the sky gates for something of unknown value, and give up everything else here. As for Chu Xiu, he did not give chase because he already had the sky-piercing key. Therefore, the moment Lin Songlong made his move, Chu Xiu also made his move. His target was the ancient book in the corner. The things here were all written in Sanskrit. Other than Yi Buoxuan, no one else knew what was written on it. However, Chu Xiu was certain that the item in it had a deep connection with the source power of the Mahakala heavenly demon sect, which was the world annihilation flame. Previously, when Chu Xiu had shattered the statue in the main hall, he had gained insight into the true martial intent of the world annihilation flame. The ancient book gave Chu Xiu a different feeling, as though there was some kind of power within it that was throbbing. Seeing Chu Xiu make his move, Yi Buoxuan and Li Jiaodi followed suit. The only difference was that Yi Buoxuan could understand the Sanskrit and knew what he wanted. He also knew what the most valuable item here was. As for Li Jiaodi, she purely wanted to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. Most women were more vengeful than men, especially women like Li Jiaodi, who had an extreme personality. She would remember the slap that Chu Xiu had given her for the rest of her life. If she did not fight with Chu Xiu now, who would she fight with? Moreover, Li Jiaodi also had her own thoughts. Needless to say, with Chu Xiu's strength, the first thing he fancied was definitely a good thing. It was definitely the right thing to snatch it from him. A fiery lotus descended from the sky. In an instant the lotus bloomed, and countless sword chi that burned with blood flames shot out from it, gushing towards Chu Xiu. The black tortoise divine palm in Chu Xiu's hand slammed down. The powerful palm force swept across everything, shattering the blood flame sword chi. Looking behind him, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Li Jiaodi, are you courting death?" This woman had challenged his bottom line time and time again. Did she really think that he, Chu Xiu, would have tender feelings for the fairer sex? Moreover, Chu Xiu was not in the mood to have tender feelings for such an old woman. Although Li Jiaodi still looked very young and was still attractive, in reality, it was only because she had cultivated a secret technique. No one knew her actual age, but she was definitely older than Chu Wuji. "Lu Jiang," he said disdainfully from the blood soul bead. "So this is the woman who obtained the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance? This is simply a humiliation to the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. In the past, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable was so charming that countless righteous heroes fell for him. This woman can't even compare to a hair of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable." Hearing Lu Jianghe's tone, Chu Xiu was a little surprised. This person, who had always felt that he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the four demon venerables of the Kunlun devil cult in the past, was rather indignant. However, he seemed to be very respectful towards the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. Could it be because the Red Lotus Demon Venerable had redeemed him from Ningxuanji? Li Jiaodi snorted coldly and said, Chu Xiu, do you really think I'm afraid of you? The treasures here are all ownerless. You can snatch them, but I can't? Well, since you want to snatch them, I'll give you the chance. As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly Dao war case in Chu Xiu's hand had already evolved into the peerless heavenly saber. As the saber slashed down, the Buddhist light, devil qi, and Dao accumulation condensed into one. Its power was simply terrifying. In fact, Li Jiaodi had never really fought with Chu Xiu. Although she had been slapped by Chu Xiu just now, it was just a slap. It did not reflect Chu Xiu's true power at all. It was not until she really started fighting with Chu Xiu that she realized how terrifying Chu Xiu was. His powerful power was almost enough to make people despair. The crimson-red longsword in Li Jiaodi's hand rippled like a blooming lotus petal, barely blocking Chu Xiu's saber. But under the power of the saber, the ripples on the lotus petal shattered one after another, unable to withstand a single blow. After exchanging several blows, she was forced to retreat step by Chu Xiu, unable to fight back at all. At this time Su Jing, Xiao Mok and Yi Buoxuan had already begun to plunder the treasures, but Chu Xiu had no intention of competing with them. He kept chasing after Li Jiaodi. Li Jiaodi could not help but scream, Chu Xiu, aren't you afraid that you won't be able to get anything in the end? At this time, Li Jiaodi was also somewhat regretting provoking Chu Xiu at this time. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would attack her like a madman, not even bothering to snatch the treasures? Won't get it. There's no need for you to worry. I'll deal with you first, and even if I can't get the other things, I'll still be able to snatch them. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu slashed out with his sea-cleaving saber. Although they were in an extremely narrow space, and Chu Xiu was already suppressing his power to prevent the power of the saber from spreading, it was still astonishing. Li Jiaodi could not help but curse when she felt the power of the saber. Her left hand slid across the tip of the sword, and blood flowed in an instant. But the blood that streaked across the air turned into a red lotus mark, branded between her brows, crimson like a flame. At this moment, Li Jiaodi's aura had already undergone a great change. The tip of the sword pointed forward, seemingly slow, but it left a lotus mark in the air. The blood-red lotus bloomed, and the fire-like sword qi was like the rising sun. It dyed everything red, and it extinguished Chu Xiu's sea-cleaving saber. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Li Jiaodi still had some foundation. Legend had it that she had inherited a portion of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's legacy. Although according to Chu Wuji, she had only inherited some scattered remnants of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's legacy, it was still left behind by one of the 4 demon venerables in the past. Its power was still shocking enough. At this moment, Lu Jiang he was especially agitated, and he said with a look of disgust, this kind of trash actually learned the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's Red Lotus Mark of Hellfire. This is simply an insult. Chu Xiu, kid, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's Red Lotus Mark of Hellfire condensed the hellfire on her body, and her state of mind was burned by the hellfire. That was how she was able to use the Red Lotus to protect her state of mind and condense this mark. This woman is stupid and extreme. There's no way she can endure the trial of tempering her heart with hellfire. Before she can truly master it, she'll probably go berserk. Seeing how she ignited the hellfire with the power of her qi and blood just now, it's obvious that she has only cultivated half of this move. As long as you use the power of your primordial spirit to disturb the hellfire, she will be devoured by the hellfire without you needing to do anything. Kill this woman. Don't embarrass the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. Chu Xiu suddenly said, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable is a woman, right? Lu Jiang he was stunned. How did you know? Who told you that? Chu Xiu said calmly, I've never seen you so agitated for Dugu Weiwei or the other 3 demon venerables. You're so angry for a beauty. Just as Lu Jiang he wanted to explain, Chu Xiu had already made his move. The demonic qi longbow condensed in Chu Xiu's hand. However, at this moment, the demonic qi longbow condensed in Chu Xiu's hand was vivid and lifelike. Moreover, his eyes were extremely clear, unlike before, where they were corroded by the demonic qi. In the past, what Chu Xiu had learned was Dugu Weiwei's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. After seeing the true martial true intent of the Triple City Annihilation Arrow, Chu Xiu had comprehended another level of it. Therefore, what Chu Xiu used now was not the original Triple City Annihilation Arrow, nor was it Dugu Weiwei's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. Instead, it was the Triple City Annihilation Arrow that belonged to him, Chu Xiu. The arrow shot out explosively as if it had pierced through the void. The glorious Triple City Annihilation Arrow shattered in front of the arrow, and the power of nirvanic extermination permeated everything. The red lotuses shattered, and the sword chi was torn apart. Li Jiaodi screamed, and the long sword in her hand rippled with extremely hot red lotus hellfire. As the sword chi scattered, countless red lotuses bloomed in front of her. However, like a flower blooming in the night, they were instantly destroyed by the power of nirvanic extermination of the Triple City Annihilation Arrow. By the time the power of nirvanic extermination was 10 feet away from Li Jiaodi had almost exhausted all her strength to counteract the power of the arrow. However, before she could breathe a sigh of relief, a golden primordial spirit arrow appeared from the dissipating power of nirvanic extermination and shot straight at Li Jiaodi's mind. Immediately, the primordial spirit golden light exploded, stirring up the hellfire. In that instant, Li Jiaodi's mind was filled with illusions. Her inner demons kept appearing under the roasting of the hellfire. Her face immediately paled, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as Chu Xiu was about to continue attacking, a red light bloomed around Li Jiaodi's body. Her figure actually disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving only a red lotus floating on the spot. In the end, it turned into pure spiritual energy of the world and dissipated. Chu Xiu was stunned. You didn't tell me that she knew this move. Even Chu Xiu couldn't figure out how Li Jiaodi managed to escape. This woman's mouth was so foul, and her personality was so bad. She had not been killed after so many years, so he believed that this move was the key. Lu Jiang, he was stunned. Didn't that Chu kid from the Yinma clan say that this woman had only received a little bit of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance? How did she even know the Red Lotus escape? You can't blame me for the information being wrong. Then Lu Jiang, he seemed to think of something and hurriedly said, That's right, with the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. Before Lu Jiang he could finish, Chu Xiu interrupted, There's no need to explain. An explanation is just a cover-up. Besides, why do you need to explain to me? I'm not interested in listening to you cover up right now. With that, Chu Xiu did not give Lu Jiang a chance to continue speaking. He immediately ran over to Su Jing and Xiao Mok. Just now, he had been staring at Li Jiaodi as she fought. Xiao Moha and Su Jing had already plundered everything that could be plundered, and were rushing towards the ancient books that Chu Xiu had seen. He had no time to waste with Lu Jianghe. Chapter 920. In the eyes of Su Yan and Xiao Mok, the battle between Chu Xiu and Li Jiaodi was a dogfight. They were happy to see the internal strife of the Yinma lineage, but they had not expected Chu Xiu to finish off Li Jiaodi so quickly, and attack them in the blink of an eye. In terms of pure combat strength, both Su Jing and Xiao Mok were actually inferior to the current Chu Xiu. However, warriors who cultivated the Tao of Karma had a slightly different battle style from others. The difficulty of dealing with them was not something that ordinary people could compare to. However, the result was very different when they encountered Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had not cultivated the Tao of Karma that was purely used for divination. But the heaven sun gazing at air could be considered a secret technique that could deduce the secrets of heaven. Now, Chu Xiu no longer used the heaven sun gazing at air to fight his enemies. At most, he would use the heaven sun gazing at air to lock onto his opponent's dodging position in advance when he used the Triple City Destruction Arrow. Every arrow was almost guaranteed to hit its target. This was not because the heaven sun gazing at air was not strong enough, but because the current Chu Xiu's martial path was already more inclined towards suppressing others with strength. He directly used strength to crush his opponents. However, now that he was facing Su Jing and Xiao Mok, the heaven sun gazing at air came in handy once again. Su Jing formed a Buddhist seal with his hand, and Buddha shadows descended one after another, crushing towards Chu Xiu. However, every Buddha shadow seemed to target all of Chu Xiu's weaknesses. Although Xiao Mok had lost his sight, His perception had increased by a notch ever since he lost his sight. He chanted Buddhist mantras, which resounded in Chuxio's mind, but in reality, it was also weakening his perception. At the same time, the two of them were constantly deducing all the flaws in Chuxio's body, as well as all of his subsequent changes, and so on. Two of the strongest existences in the Buddhist sect who cultivated the Tao of karma joined hands to divine a person. They could divine almost from the beginning of the fight to the end. Even if there were 10,000 changes, they could divine it. However, when they started to deduce Chuxio, they discovered that there was actually another force on Chuxio's body that was resisting their deductions, and it magnified every result by 1,000 or 10,000 times. In this way, not to mention 10,000 possibilities, there were even 100,000 or 1,000,000 possibilities. Although they cultivated the Tao of karma, it was actually just a secret technique to steal the secrets of the heavens. Only gods and Buddhas could truly take every possibility into account. They were not gods or Buddhas. They were still humans. Hence, they could not divine such an outcome. Su Jing and Xiao Mok turned their heads towards each other at the same time. Su Jing was looking at Xiao Mok, while Xiao Mok was looking at him out of habit. This situation could only mean one thing. Chuxio had also cultivated a secret technique that involved the Tao of karma. Furthermore, his level of cultivation was not low. However, what they could not understand was how someone like Chuxio was able to cultivate such a secret technique. Where was the justice in this world? Before they could recover from their shock, Chuxio had already made his move. The sea-cleaving saber swept everything with its monstrous might. The sharpness of the saber forced them to retreat. At this moment, Chuxio formed a Buddhist seal with his hand, and cast the great sun-shifting technique that he had not used for a long time. The Mahavirokana Dharma appeared behind Chuxio. It struck with its palm, and the scorching and dazzling Buddhist light suppressed everything. Su Jing and Xiao Mok felt very uncomfortable when they saw Chuxio, a person of the demonic path, use the Buddhist Dharma. However, they could still withstand this move. Su Jing's white and plump smiling face was solemn and serene. He unleashed the 9-transformation lion roar of the Great Light Temple. Every time he roared, there would be ripples, and the Buddhist light in front of him would dissipate. On Xiao Mok's side, there were thousands of Buddha shadows circling around him. They were bathed in the light of the great sun. Not only were they unharmed, but they were also absorbing the power of the light. However, at this moment, something strange happened. The Mahavirokana Dharma behind Chuxio suddenly changed. A black dot appeared on the forehead of the Dharma. As the black dot gradually expanded, the solemn Mahavirokana Dharma turned into an angry one. 2 arms appeared behind him, and they formed a seal at the same time. In an instant, the black dot had completely infected Mahavirokana, turning him into the Mahavirokana demon god. Mahavirokana, Mahavirokana. The pinnacle of light was darkness. The Mahavirokana chanted, but what it brought was endless eternal night. In an instant, Su Jing and Xiao Mok's vision went dark. Endless power of nirvanic extermination invaded their bodies. Under this pressure, they could not sense anything. They could only use all the power in their bodies to resist it. Yi Buoxuan, who had already gotten what he wanted, had been observing the battle between Chuxio, Su Jing and Xiao Mok. He was not of the lurking devil lineage, so he would not help Chuxio if he wanted to take the treasure. However, he was of the demonic path. Furthermore, he was from the 6th demon sect, which had a great feud with the Buddhist path. Therefore, he had already made plans. If Chuxio was at a disadvantage and in danger, he would help. He could discuss the Buddhist path, and he could earn a favor from the lurking devil lineage. However, after seeing Chuxio make his move, he knew that he could only watch from the sidelines. Chuxio's victory was already secured. It was no wonder that an old monster like Wei Shuya would treat Chuxio as his successor. He had even used all his connections and power to send Chuxio to the position of the lurking devil lineage's successor. Putting everything else aside, Chuxio's shocking talent in the martial Tao was definitely the most terrifying person a Boxen had ever seen. Just now, Chuxio had seen the portrait of the Mahavirokana. Yi Buoxuan had translated to him that the Mahavirokana was the Virokana. It had only been a short while, But Chu Xiu had already figured out the key and connected the two powers. This level of comprehension and talent was simply terrifying. At the same time, this also proved that Chu Xiu had already cultivated this Buddhist technique to the extreme. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to convert it so naturally. Seeing that Su Jing and Xiao Maha were temporarily resisting the power of nirvanic extermination, Chu Xiu went directly to the ancient book and kept it in his bag with a wave of his hand. It was not that he did not want to kill these two people, but that he could not. They were just fighting for the treasure, not fighting to the death. Although these two people were temporarily suppressed by him, they still had a base that they had not used. After all, this was the southern land, which was considered the sphere of influence of the Subodhi monastery. Chu Xiu did not want to delay for too long. Who knew if Rama would suddenly attack? Therefore, after getting the item, Chu Xiu turned and left. When Yi Buoxuan saw that Chu Xiu had left, he naturally would not stay here any longer. He left immediately as well. Otherwise, he would easily become the punching bag of these two monks. When Su Jing and Xiao Maha finally completely offset the power of nirvanic extermination in front of them, they looked at the empty hall and suddenly sighed. Previously, you said that you miscalculated the karma of Chu Xiu. But now I suddenly feel that you did not miscalculate. Xiao Maha was surprised. What do you mean? Su Jing's fat face no longer had the smile of a Maitreya Buddha. Instead, there was a trace of worry. With Chu Xiu's talent and potential, and more importantly, his ruthless nature, I am worried that he will grow to the level of Dugu Weiwei in the future. At that time, let alone your Subodhi monastery, any sect in the world will be at risk of being annihilated. Xiao Maha was stunned. Then he shook his head. Absolutely impossible. In the past 10,000 years, there has only been one Dugu Weiwei in the Jianghu. How could another demon like him appear so soon? Chu Xiu's talent and potential were indeed frightening, but Dugu Weiwei was already in existence that made people despair. No matter how much Xiao Maha thought of Chu Xiu, he would not elevate him to the level of Dugu Weiwei. Su Jing smiled bitterly. I hope that I'm just worrying for nothing. After a moment of silence, the two of them left. However, Su Jing returned directly to the Great Light Temple, while Xiao Maha had someone take over the ruins of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult. Although the place had been ransacked by everyone, there was no guarantee that they would not overlook anything. It was worth searching again. At this time in the outside world, Chu Xiu had already found a secluded place to read through the book. However, when he opened it, he suddenly smacked his head. He had miscalculated. He had only felt that this thing had some connection to the flames of annihilation that he had comprehended. However, he had forgotten that all the words in the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult were written in Sanskrit. This cultivation method must be the same. At this time, Yi Buoxuan walked out of the black fog like a ghost. He smiled and said, Official Chu, are you worried about the cultivation method? If Official Chu trusts me, I can help you translate these cultivation method books. The cultivation methods of the sixth demon sect were written in Sanskrit in the beginning. They are cryptic and difficult to understand. It took several generations of hard work before we finally succeeded in translating them. It might take some effort to translate those ordinary words, but I can guarantee that I will be accurate when translating this cultivation method. Moreover, Official Chu, you don't have to worry about me secretly learning this cultivation method. Although the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult and the Sixth Demon Sect come from the same source, our martial arts are completely different. The legacy of the Sixth Demon Sect is not inferior to that of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult. It's not worth it to switch to another cultivation method. Not everyone in the pugilistic world is like Official Chu, who can cultivate Tao, Buddhism, and demonic. Yi Buoxuan had no ill intentions for appearing here. He had purely come with the intention of forming a good relationship. Translating the cultivation method was just a slight effort. Just based on the talent and comprehension that Chu Xiu had displayed just now, it was worth his investment. Chu Xiu did not even think about it before saying, Then I'll have to trouble Master Yi. Not to mention that he wasn't worried about Yi Buoxuan secretly learning it. Even if Yi Buoxuan directly made a copy of the cultivation method, he wouldn't be worried. Even if two people from the same sect learned the same cultivation method, the effects would be different. Take Chu Xiu's heaven extinguishing earth annihilating oblivion killing fist for example. There were many people in the pugilistic world who knew it, but when Chu Xiu used it, it had a unique martial rhythm that belonged to him. The Great Black Heavenly Demon cult's cultivation method was the same. He had first obtained the true martial intent of the world-annihilating flame from the statue of Shiva. Therefore, in the entire pugilistic world, he was the only one who could truly understand the true martial intent within. In fact, he wasn't even worried that Yi Buoxuan would translate it unintentionally or intentionally, because the feeling of the true martial intent was the most reliable. Chapter 921. Translating a cultivation technique wasn't a difficult task for Yi Buoxuan. It only took about 2 hours for Yi Buoxuan to write out the translated cultivation technique for Chu Xiu. Letting out a long sigh, Yi Buoxuan said, "This cultivation technique is the core secret technique of the Great Black Heavenly Demon sect. It's hard to say the name after the translation, but according to the customs of the Kunlun Devil cult, it's more appropriate to call it the Great Black Heavenly Demon technique. There are many records regarding the Great Black Heavenly Demon sect, or rather, records regarding the Sanskrit religion, which allowed me to gain something. The Sixth Demon sect is indeed a part of the ancient Sanskrit religion. The Great Black Heavenly Demon sect is a Sanskrit religion, and the Great Black Heavenly Demon Palace in Shiva Temple is one of the incarnations of Shiva. And the Sixth Demon sect's predecessor is the Sixth Demon Palace in Shiva Temple. The sixth demon is also one of the incarnations of Shiva. With regards to finding out the origin of his sect, Yi Buoxuan only felt a sense of satisfaction from solving a riddle, but he wasn't really excited about it. In the ancient times, the people of the Sixth Demon Palace were all dead. It was later people who discovered the ruins and built the Sixth Demon sect. So in reality, there wasn't much of a connection between the two, and Yi Buoxuan wasn't interested in finding an ancestor of the ancient times either. At this time, Yi Buoxuan flipped to the last page of the ancient book and said doubtfully, "There's something like this on the last page of the ancient book. There aren't any words or annotations on it, and looking at the material, it seems to have been added in later and rebound. I can't tell what it is." Chu Xiu took a look. The thing that Yi Buoxuan was talking about was a painting. In fact, it couldn't even be considered a painting. It was a very strange thing. At a rough glance, it looked like a few irregular circles of bubbles squeezed together. However, upon closer inspection, these circles of bubbles were marked with various points and lines. There seemed to be a pattern to them. Although Chu Xiu could not understand them, he had a vague feeling that he could not understand them. Unable to guess what it was, Chu Xiu didn't delve too deeply into it. He planned to take it back and study it slowly. "Many thanks, Master Yi." Yi Buoxuan smiled. "No need to be so polite, Official Chu. You and I are both from the demonic lineage, so this small matter is nothing." After chatting a bit more with Yi Buoxuan, the two said their goodbyes and left. It had to be said that Yi Buoxuan, or perhaps the entire Sixth Heavenly Devil sect, was very smart. When you don't have the strength, you don't pick a side. What do you mean by being neutral? That's just courting death. However, if you maintained a neutral stance after gaining strength, then you would become the target of both sides. The Sixth Heavenly Demon sect was located far away in the South China Sea. They rarely participated in the disputes of the Central Plains, so the bright demons and the hidden demons didn't have any ill feelings towards them. In addition, the other party was strong enough, so both sides were even more unwilling to offend such a person. Yi Buoxuan had even more good karma. It was said that he had a good relationship with Eastern Emperor Tai. Right now, Chu Xiu owed him a favor. In the future, if Chu Xiu truly took charge of the Yinma clan, this favor would be worth a lot of money. If Chu Xiu were to die prematurely, it wouldn't matter. Anyway, he wouldn't lose anything. After returning to the Zhenwu Hall, Chu Xiu just called Mei Qinglian and the others to ask if there was anything important. Then he went into seclusion. After Yi Buoxuan had translated the Great Black Sky Demon skill, Chu Xiu was prepared to cultivate it. It wasn't difficult to cultivate this skill, because Chu Xiu had already obtained the true meaning of Shiva's martial path from the statue of Shiva, and seen the apocalyptic fire. Now that he was cultivating the Great Black Sky Demon skill, it was a matter of course. The Great Black Sky Demon God was one of Shiva's incarnations. It was in charge of destruction, and its form was the three-eyed, four-armed one in the temple. It could cultivate the apocalyptic fire, and its power was incomparably domineering. As for Chushio's Triple City Annihilation Arrow, it was a secret skill of the Great Black Sky Demon skill, and also an extremely powerful one. After more than a month, Chushio had more or less mastered the Great Black Sky Demon skill. Looking at the drawing on the last page of the book, Chushio thought for a moment, then sent for Grandmaster Yuanji. Among the people under Chushio, when it came to miscellaneous knowledge, no one could compare to this unorthodox divination grandmaster. When Chushio sent for Grandmaster Yuanji, he was in a brothel, hugging a girl and watching her dance. As he watched, he stared at the girl's slender waist, wondering if he should redeem the girl. During this period of time, Grandmaster Yuanji could be said to be very comfortable. He was originally a Northern Yen person. Previously, he was the #1 fortune teller of the Northern Yen, and had a great reputation in the Northern Yen. It was only because of Nie Renlong that he was forced to leave the Northern Yen. Now that he was back, it could be said that he was returning to his hometown with glory. Moreover, compared to his previous reputation as the #1 fortune teller, he now had the backing of someone. Other warriors of the Jinwu Hall had to go out and suppress the martial arts of the Northern Yen to prevent some people from causing trouble and maintaining order. Although they were not too busy, they still had things to do. However, Grandmaster Yuanji was a fortune teller. Naturally, he would not do things like fighting and killing. Therefore, he returned to his old profession in Yanjing City, which was fortune telling. Of course, it was not cheap. Chushio knew all this, but he did not stop them. As long as his subordinates maintained absolute loyalty and execution ability, he did not care about anything else. Of course, Grandmaster Yuanji was also very tactful. He paid a high price for fortune-telling for the high officials and nobles in Yanjing City, but he did not charge a single cent for fortune-telling for the people of the Jinwu Hall. Previously, the 13th prince of the Northern Yen, Xiangcheng, came to find him for fortune-telling. He actually asked him to tell if he had the appearance of a real dragon. This almost scared Grandmaster Yuanji. How could fortune-telling be done so casually? How could it be done so casually? Fortunately, Mei Qinglian had arrived in time, which allowed him to escape this calamity. However, Mei Qinglian also made it very difficult for him. Mei Qinglian also asked him to tell her fortune, but Mei Qinglian actually asked Yuanji to tell her marriage. Yuanji was too embarrassed to say that he had predicted that Mei Qinglian had the fate of a jinx to her husband. Ordinary people could not control her. Therefore, Grandmaster Yuanji could only say a lot of good words, which sent Mei Qinglian away. At this time, hearing Chushio's summon, Grandmaster Yuanji did not care about her small waist. He immediately let go of the girl in his arms and went to see Chushio. When Chushio saw Grandmaster Yuanji panting and running over, he wondered, "What have you been doing? Are you not in the Jinwu Hall?" Grandmaster Yuanji smiled awkwardly. "I went to the martial arts practice field to cultivate. Although it was useless, I took it as a way to strengthen my body." Chushio did not care. He handed the strange pattern to Grandmaster Yuanji and told him about the Mahakala demon cult. Then he asked, "Can you tell what this thing is?" The Mahakala demon cult placed it on the last page of their cultivation manual. Obviously, this thing is also extremely important to them. Grandmaster Yuanji took a deep breath, and the expression on his face became solemn. The things that Chushio told him challenged his worldview. Among them, there were also some secrets from ancient times and so on. Grandmaster Yuanji looked at it for a long time before saying, "Official Chu, to be honest, I have never seen this thing, but I have some guesses." "Feel free to say it," Grandmaster Yuanji said. "Official Chu, do you think the world we are in is round or round?" This was not the Earth of Chushio's previous life. This world was actually very strange. The West Pole was an uninhabited desert. The North Pole was a wasteland. The South Barbarian was a mountain and bordered the sea. And the East Pole was a sea. It was said that a powerhouse once built a huge ship and headed to the South Sea. In the beginning, There were countless islands and many overseas martial artists. However, as he headed further south, there were endless storms that even tore his ship apart. He relied on his powerful cultivation to tread on the water, but at the end of the South Sea, there was only a boundless abyss cliff that devoured the seawater. It was as though there was no end to it. That was the end of the world. Of course, this was only a legend. No one would be so bored as to spend half of their life to take a look at the end of the world. Therefore, in response to Grandmaster Yuanji's question, Chu Xiu pondered for a while and said, "Now it seems that it is round." Grandmaster Yuanji said, "About that, it's both right and wrong. We fortune-tellers like to study such things, which is why we had some guesses before. It's said that the world we are in is round, and square, but is there a sky beyond this sky? My lord, take a look at these round things. If they are skies, then our world is within them. However, there are other skies beyond the skies, and within the skies, there is another world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 skies surround each other and form another circle, while the outside world is another boundless sky, forming another round sky. Based on the clues we have now, the major sects of ancient times came up with the plan to split open the skies before the calamity came. In that case, they must have broken through this layer of the sky and gone to another. Moreover, the fact that members of the Black Sky Demon cult could return from that heaven meant that these heavens were connected to each other. I don't understand the various lines and nodes in the pattern, but it's clear that they are the key to the connection between the skies. Having said all that in a single breath, Grandmaster Yuanji breathed a long sigh of relief. Those things were rather shocking, and even if he had deduced everything, he would not dare to say that everything he thought was correct. Therefore, he paused for a moment before saying, "Official Chu, these are just my guesses. They cannot be taken seriously without evidence." Chu Xiu nodded, stroking his chin. While it was all Grandmaster Yuanji's guesses, he felt that his analysis was not far from the truth. Moreover, the role of the Sky Gate was also very suspicious. The sky-piercing key could traverse space, and while the Sky Gate had not appeared in the world for a long time, it was to search for the sky-piercing key each time it did. Did that not mean that they were already aware of those secrets? In fact, even the name of the Sky Gate was very suspicious. Before this, Chu Xiu had thought that the Sky Gate meant that they were very powerful and stood on a high pedestal, which was why they were arrogant enough to call themselves the Sky Gate. Now, it seemed that the Sky Gate was literally a door that could reach the heavens. Chapter 922. After Master Yuanji left, Chu Xiu did not continue to think about heaven, because it was useless to think about it. Although he knew that the sky-reaching key was related to going to other heaven, and he also believed that the strange map recorded the location of other heaven, it was useless because he could not understand it. Since he found that the sky-reaching key could pass through the green space, Chu Xiu had tried to use it in other places, but it was useless because he could not understand it. This thing was only effective in the green space, where the space was weak. Although he suspected that Elysium knew something, the gap between him and Elysium was too big. He had no clue about investigating Elysium. Even if he had, it would be suicide for Chu Xiu to investigate Elysium rashly. So since there was no progress, what was the point of thinking about all this nonsense? He might as well continue to practice. Chu Xiu had already touched the threshold of the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire, so he had been thinking about breaking through this bottleneck. Refining his body with real fire could make Chu Xiu comparable to a normal warrior in the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire. If he reached the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire, the two would be superimposed. This was a realm that even Chunqing Di had not reached. Could he be comparable to the metaphysic realm of heaven and earth? Maybe after he finished practicing, he should ask Shang Tianliang for advice, and see what the lower limit of the metaphysic realm of heaven and earth was. While Chu Xiu was concentrating on practicing, there was a change in the Northern Yan. In one of the chambers of the Northern Yan Imperial Palace, Xiang Long was lying on the bed. His appearance was so haggard that he did not look like a human anymore. Only a layer of skin was left on him. Compared to when Chu Xiu saw him a few months ago, he was a completely different person. An imperial physician trembled beside the bed and said, "Your Majesty, your body is too weak now. You can't use strong medicine. You can only take some warm medicine and rest in peace. This imperial physician was also very helpless. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Xianglong would not be able to hold on for much longer. However, what else could he do? He couldn't possibly tell Xianglong that His Majesty could now wait for his death in peace. He could heal other illnesses and injuries, but when it came to lifespan, he really couldn't do anything about it. Xianglong raised his hand and said, "I don't want to take medicine anymore." That imperial physician was so frightened that he fell to his knees. However, Xianglong weakly waved his hand and said, "Get up. This has nothing to do with you. We know that we do not have much longer to live. You can leave now." When the imperial physician left, trembling, Xianglong stared blankly in front, not knowing what was going on. Eunuch Han, who was beside Xianglong, said softly, "Your Majesty, let it go. Perhaps after a period of rest, your body will recover." Xianglong didn't respond to Eunuch Han's comforting words. After a while he said in a hoarse voice, "We don't accept this. I had spent my life building the Yan dynasty to build the Yan dynasty, and Hao Chang, Yen Yen, Yen Yen, Hao, Tian Qi, Yen Hao not to Hao Yen not, but Chang to Emperor, dynasty, while I was still reading the Hao, Yen was sleeping with a Yen. If you give me Eastern Qi, within 10 years, I will be able to conquer the world and create a truly prosperous empire." Xianglong's voice was filled with unwillingness and unwillingness. Some people were born with everything, but they didn't cherish it. The vast Eastern Qi, the fertile Central Plains, was now in the hands of that good-for-nothing, Lu Haochang. How could he swallow this insult? "Go get the North vanquishing king here," Xianglong suddenly said. Eunuch Han hesitated for a moment, but he still followed Xianglong's instructions and called for the North vanquishing king. After a quarter of an hour, a stalwart middle-aged man walked into the bedroom. This middle-aged man wore an embroidered dragon robe. Not only was his figure stalwart and tall, his appearance was masculine and handsome, and he possessed an extraordinary aura. In front of him, Xianglong seemed even weaker and weaker. Xianglong looked at the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man looked back at him, but neither of them said a word. After a long while, the middle-aged man couldn't help but say, "Why did you call me over? Is it so that I can watch you die here? I've said it before, after your death, I will only drink and celebrate. I will not mourn for you, brother." This middle-aged man was an expert of the Northern Yan royal family, the person in charge of the imperial worship hall, the North vanquishing king, Xiangcheng. The Northern Yan was located in the north, but Xiangcheng's title was the North vanquishing king. One could imagine his importance in the Northern Yan royal family. The Northern Yan royal family's strongest military organization, the Imperial Worship Hall, was in his hands. He was also the only one in Xianglong's generation who had reached the true fire spirit ascension realm. Of course, he also had another identity. He was Xianglong's younger brother, born from the same mother. But now, the way he looked at Xianglong was filled with mockery, disgust, and even hatred. Xianglong smiled bitterly and said, "You still hate me?" In front of Xiangcheng, Xianglong didn't address himself as emperor. In front of him, Xianglong was not an emperor, but a failed brother. Xiangcheng sneered and said, "Hate? For the sake of this *T throne, you killed the crown prince and the others. It's understandable. When the three of us were young, the crown prince used to bully and humiliate us. But in the end, why did you kill our eldest brother? Is the throne that important to you? Look at you now, fighting and scheming against others, plotting against each other. At the end of the day, decades of time are nothing but dust. Is there any meaning to it?" There was no expression on Xianglong's face, which only had a layer of skin left. He said coolly, "Do you still think that I killed our eldest brother? I did it for the sake of Great Yan. If Great Yan had a foundation like Eastern Qi, I'd rather be an idle king, helping my eldest brother to come up with strategies and strategies. After helping him ascend to the throne, I would be like you, concentrating on the cultivation of martial arts." But what was Great Yan like at that time? It was surrounded by enemies on all sides, in a precarious situation. Great Yan was not Eastern Qi. Even though Eastern Qi had produced a few useless idiots, Eastern Qi was still Eastern Qi. But if Great Yin made a mistake, we would be doomed eternally. My eldest brother did not deserve the throne, but he refused to let go. What else could I do? Do I have to sit back and watch my eldest brother bring Great Yin into the abyss? If that happens, we will all die. Xianglong sighed when he saw that Xiangcheng's eyes were still filled with disdain and hatred. He did not explain further. You're right about one thing, he said weakly. I'm about to die. I know you hate me, but you can't possibly hate Great Yin too, can you? Before I die, I'm going to lay out a trap, which can at least ensure the stability of Great Yin for decades. At that time, I'll be able to leave with a peace of mind. Xiangcheng frowned and said, What trap? And who are you going to pass the throne to? Xianglong hesitated for a brief moment, then said in a low voice, Xiangcheng. Why not Xiangli? Asked Xiangcheng curiously. He was the second prince, and the ancestral teaching of Great Yin was to establish the eldest brother first. Moreover, for so many years, Xiangli had always thought that he would be the future emperor of Great Yin. Everyone in the imperial court thought so, and many of them had thrown themselves into Xiangli's service. Do you know how much internal strife Great Yan's imperial court will fall into by doing this? Xiangcheng laughed coldly and said, Don't tell me you made Xiangcheng the crown prince just because he looks like you when you were young? Back then, you did not get the throne properly. So, are you going to let your son break the ancestral teaching of Great Yin as well? Xianglong did not pay any attention to Xiangcheng's sarcasm. It's exactly because Xiangli has always thought that he is the crown prince that I don't want to pass the throne to him, he said coolly. They are both my sons, and their abilities are almost the same. How can I play around with such an important matter just because of my own preference? The powers in Xiangli's hands are too complicated. For so many years, I've been paying attention to him, watching him collect all the good and bad powers. But with his overall strength, there is no way he can control these powers. He thinks he is the chosen one, and that's why he has been collecting these powers without any scruples. You should know that the powers you have now will have to return them when you ascend to the throne in the future. In comparison, Xiangcheng is much simpler. If I give him the throne, he will cherish it even more. But the powers in Xiangcheng's hands are weaker. How can you guarantee that he can sit firmly on the throne in the future? You. Xiangcheng was taken aback. Then he sneered and said, You want me to help your son sit firmly on the throne? Have you lost your mind because of your illness? Xianglong cleared his throat and said in a low voice, Third brother, I know you hate me, but I also know that you can't let go of Great Yin either. Otherwise, with your overall strength, how could you be willing to sit quietly in the imperial sinecure hall for so many years? Among the descendants of the Northern Yin imperial clan, Xiangwu was undoubtedly the most outstanding among the younger generation. And Xianglong's generation was Xiangcheng, who stood before him. Xianglong knew that Xiangcheng hated him deeply, but he still conferred him the title of Northern King, and gave him the command of the most important organization, the Imperial Sinecure Hall. It was because he knew that no matter how much Xiangcheng hated him, he would not do anything to him. Although Xiangcheng hated him, he also cared about the Northern Yin Imperial clan, and he would not do anything that would harm the Northern Yin Imperial clan. Xianglong said in a deep voice, Third brother, I don't have long to live, but the troubles of Great Yin have not been solved. I know you hate me, but I believe you. Help me stabilize Great Yin, or should I say, help the Xiang clan stabilize Great Yin. Xiangcheng remained silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, What do you want to do? Upon hearing Xiangcheng's question, a smile emerged on Xianglong's face. He knew that Xiangcheng had agreed. Although Great Yin seems to be peaceful now, it is riddled with holes. Within it, there is the martial suppression hall, a power that can't be shaken off. I can't control Chu Xiu, and although Xiangcheng has a good relationship with him, I can't control him either. Outside, there is Great Yan's Jianghu, which has caused a great disaster. The Great Light Temple is located in the Yin Kingdom, but they have never considered themselves as a citizen of the Yin Kingdom. Those monks have no respect for the emperor, and they are lawless. Further away, although Eastern Qi has a mediocre Lu Hao Chang, with the resources of Eastern Qi, if they are replaced by a slightly capable emperor, they will definitely be the nightmare of Great Yin. With the internal and external troubles, Great Yan is already in a mess. So, I will make it even more chaotic, and only then can we win in the chaos. Xianglong fixed his eyes on Xiangcheng and said in a deep voice, "Third brother, in the entire Great Yan, I only trust you. Help me, Xiang clan, stabilize Great Yan, and when I'm dead in the future, I'll personally go down there and apologize to my imperial brother." Chapter 923. In Eastern Qi's Chunyang Dao sect, Xiangcheng, who had disguised himself and came here secretly, was feeling uneasy. Xianglong's plan was too big and his plan was crazy. Once it failed, the Northern Yan would be in a mess. However, if Xianglong's plan was really carried out and he succeeded, the Northern Yan's strength would skyrocket. At the same time, it would create a strong yet fragile balance. When he first heard of Xianglong's plan, Xiangcheng's first reaction was that Xianglong was crazy. However, Xiangcheng agreed in the end. As for why he agreed, perhaps it was because he hated Xianglong for disregarding his brotherhood for the sake of the throne. However, he had to admit that the Northern Yan's current scale was all thanks to Xianglong's governance and planning. He was not a good brother or a good father, but he was a qualified emperor. Xiangcheng was just a martial artist. However, decades ago, he did not have the strength of the spiritual refinement state with real fire. Even if he had, a real fire refinement state would not be able to save the Northern Yan. So now, even if he thought Xianglong's plan was crazy, he still nodded and agreed. He even wanted to do these things personally. This was because only he could obtain Xianglong's absolute trust. Only his strength and status could guarantee the completion of these tasks. The Chunyang Dao sect was his second stop. His first stop was the Great Light Temple. The reason why Xiangcheng went to the Great Light Temple was simple. According to Xianglong, he invited the Great Light Temple to come to Yanjing City to build a branch temple. He also used the excuse that there were many bandits and villains in the Northern Yan to ask the monks of the Great Light Temple to come forward and suppress these people. Xianglong was extremely afraid of the Great Light Temple. However, he took the initiative to lead the Great Light Temple. In fact, it was because he was even more afraid of Chu Xiu. All along, Xianglong knew that he wanted Chu Xiu to deal with the Great Light Temple. In the end, Chu Xiu was only pretending to comply but secretly slacking off. He could not do anything about it. Since it did not work on Chu Xiu's side, then he would bring in the Great Light Temple and drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. He would disperse the power of the subduing martial hall. With Chu Xiu's personality, he did not believe that Chu Xiu could endure it. As for the Great Guangming Temple, they were not idiots. They naturally knew what Xianglong was thinking, but they still agreed. There was only one reason. Yanjing City was the core of the entire Northern Yan. The Great Guangming Temple was extremely strict in recruiting disciples, but it was precisely because of this that they needed a large number of disciples to be screened. Now that Xianglong had opened up the core of the Northern Yan to the Great Guangming Temple, the Great Guangming Temple could not refuse. Although Xianglong had already guessed that Su Yun and the other upper echelons of the Temple of Great Light would definitely request their disciples to focus on teaching and not have any conflict with Chu Xiu, Xianglong believed that conflict would happen sooner or later. The reason was very simple. It was impossible for a Buddha and a demon to coexist peacefully under the same roof. Xiangcheng wanted to say that Xianglong was playing with fire. This kind of behavior might be rejecting the tiger at the front door and inviting the wolf at the back door. However, Xianglong's next plan was even more daring. This was no longer playing with fire, it was directly roasting himself on the fire. The reason why he came to the Chunyang Dao sect was also very simple. He also wanted to bring in the Chunyang Dao sect into Yanjing City. Taoism and Buddhism could not coexist, and they kept each other in check. As the local tyrant of the Northern Yan, the Great Guangming Temple would undoubtedly have another enemy, and an additional layer of risk of conflict. Moreover, Xianglong had already calculated everything. The probability of the Chunyang Dao sect agreeing was more than 90%. The reason was very simple. The Chunyang Dao sect did not have an easy time in Eastern Qi. There were two major Taoist sects in Eastern Qi. The Chunyang Dao sect was not well-liked due to its own way of doing things. It could not compare to the peaceful real martial arts sect. Most importantly, because of Ning Xuanji's halo. The real martial arts sect was now the national religion of Eastern Qi. With the support of the country's power, even if the real martial arts sect's current strength was not too strong. And although Lu Chonglu was a good person, he was just a good person, at least the real martial arts sect did not have to worry about the decline of the next generation. On the other hand, the Chunyang Dao sect was in danger and needed a new breakthrough. Therefore, after Xiang Chong personally came to the Chunyang Dao sect and told the Chunyang Dao sect about this, Ling Yunzi, who was in seclusion, personally agreed to let Shi Yunzi bring the older generation of Chunyang Dao sect to northern Yan and establish the Chunyang Dao sect's branch in northern Yan. After coming out of the Chunyang Dao sect, Xiang Chong let out a long sigh. He had to admit that Xiang Long had been the emperor for decades. At least in terms of thinking about people, he was much better than him, a martial artist who had been practicing martial arts for decades. The integration of the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Devil could be considered to have balanced the internal problems. As for the external problems, Xiang Chong still had to go to the East Sea to meet the people of the Jiangshan Pavilion. The Jiangshan Pavilion was one of the 6 sects of human harmony. In fact, it was rarely active in the Central Plains, and its behavior was not too much related to the sections. To be precise, it was an organization to restore the country. It was called the Grassland Sect, but in fact it was a fallen royal family. In the past, there were many small countries in the Central Plains, and countless countries had been destroyed. The Jiangshan Pavilion was formed by the royal family of a small country in the past. Because it carried the wealth of a country, although it was a small country, it was the most powerful among the 6 sections. In these years, the Jiangshan Pavilion was very smart. Or it could be said that they accidentally avoided the disputes in the Central Plains. Instead, they developed their strength at the junction of the East Sea and the coast, and carried out the trade between the Central Plains and overseas. Xiang Long did not know where he got the news that the Jiangshan Pavilion had even controlled a few islands overseas, and their strength was definitely not weak. What Xiang Chong needed to do was to go to the Jiangshan Pavilion and persuade the Jiangshan Pavilion to move all their strength to the Central Plains. Xiang Long could give the Jiangshan Pavilion a promise to restore the country. The word, restore the country, could be said to be the obsession of the generations of the Jiangshan Pavilion. However, as the strength of the Jiangshan Pavilion grew, the matter of restoring the country became more and more desperate. Because now was not the chaotic world of 100 years ago. There were many small countries in the world. Now, even the weakest of the 3 countries, West Chu, was not something they could shake. Xiang Long said that he wanted to help the Jiangshan Pavilion restore the country. This was not to find trouble for himself, but to find an ally to resist the Eastern Qi. What Xiang Long wanted to give to the Jiangshan Pavilion was not people, nor things, but a piece of land. A piece of land that could allow the Jiangshan Pavilion to restore the country. That place was Wei County. Although the Northern Yan had ruled Wei County for decades, in fact, the Northern Yan had never really controlled Wei County. The people of Wei County had never acknowledged the Northern Yan. Therefore, for the Northern Yan, this piece of land was more important than its reputation. It could even be a trouble. If Xiang Long had time, he could completely digest Wei County slowly. Unfortunately, he did not have much time. Therefore, it was worth it to use such a troublesome piece of land in exchange for the support of the Jiangshan Pavilion. Moreover, Wei County was on the border between the Northern Yan and the Eastern Qi. If the Eastern Qi attacked, the Wei County occupied by the Jiangshan Pavilion would be an excellent buffer zone. Compared to convincing the Great Guangming Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect, it was undoubtedly much easier to convince the Jiangshan Pavilion. As long as Xiang Chong stated his conditions, the Jiangshan Pavilion had no reason to refuse. When Xiang Chong walked out of the Jiangshan Pavilion, he suddenly sighed tiredly. In the past, he deeply hated Xiang Long, thinking that he was a heartless and cold-blooded person who killed his own brother, who was born from the same mother, for the sake of the throne. But now he suddenly understood Xiang Long. After so many years, the things that Xiang Long had to bear were much heavier than he expected. Compared to Xiang Long, he did not need to consider so many things. He only needed to take a large number of cultivation resources from the imperial family's hall of offerings and steadily improve his cultivation. Although it was boring, it was extremely easy. Just as Xiang Cheng was planning these things from the northern Yan to the East Sea, Chu Xiu was still in seclusion in the Zhenwu Hall. This was not because Chu Xiu was not well informed, but because Xiang Long was too cautious. Just as he said, he did not trust anyone now. He only trusted Xiang Cheng, his younger brother who hated him deeply. All of this was planned by Xiang Cheng. Not even the slightest bit of information was leaked. At this moment, Mei Qinglian knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's seclusion. There's something to do. Trouble might come again. Chu Xiu stood up and stretched his muscles. Then he said, "What trouble is it this time? Is it from the Yinma clan, or the Northern Yan clan?" With the strength of the Zhenwu Hall, Mei Qinglian would not disturb him if it was a small matter. Now, it seemed that it was not a small matter. Mei Qinglian said, "It's a matter of the Northern Yan clan. Xiang Long, Zhao, you go to the court." Chu Xiu was taken aback. "You want me to attend court? What does he want?" Since Chu Xiu joined the Northern Yan Imperial Court, he had not even gone to the court once. The Northern Yan Imperial Court was in charge of the court, while the Zhenwu Hall was in charge of Jianghu. The two had nothing to do with each other. What was the use of him going to the court? Mei Qinglian shrugged and said, "Who knows? His Majesty might not be able to hold on for long. Who knows what he will do before he dies? It's better to be cautious. Bring old Master Shang with you when you go to the court." Anyway, Xiang Long did not say how many people he could bring. Chu Xiu nodded. In fact, he was not worried. With his strength, he was not afraid of Xiang Long playing any tricks. Of course, in the eyes of many, the Northern Yan Imperial Court represented by Xiang Long was the net, and Chu Xiu was just a fish. But even if he was a fish, Chu Xiu was a man-eating shark. An ordinary net could not catch him. Of course, for the sake of caution, Chu Xiu went to find Shang Tianliang and asked him to go to the court with him. After coming to the Northern Yan, Shang Tianliang's life was very comfortable. For him, as long as he left the Green Metropolis, any place was heaven. Chu Xiu found a place to help them rebuild Merchant City. So during this time, Shang Tianliang performed his duties as the Castellan, leading the people of Merchant City to rebuild their homes. In his free time, he cultivated and continued to familiarize himself with the power of the mysterious heaven and earth realm. When Chu Xiu came to find him, Shang Tianliang was a little unhappy because Chu Xiu had delayed his planting. However, there were still some people in Merchant City eating sand in Green Metropolis. Even if he was unwilling, he had to go to the palace with Chu Xiu. Chapter 924. In the Northern Yan Imperial Court, there were three distinct factions: the civil officials, the military generals, and the Xiang Li, Xiang Cheng, and other members of the royal family. Of course, there were those who did not sit next to each other. Chu Xiu was one of them. Xiang Wu was also one of them. He was a general of the West Hill Army, but he was also a member of the Northern Yan royal family. Therefore, he could not even stand on one side. He leaned against a dragon pillar and yawned. Obviously, he did not attend court often. After a long while, Xiang Long walked in with the help of Eunuch Han. Seeing Xiang Long's current state, Chu Xiu could not help but shake his head. Xiang Long was already at the end of his rope. Chu Xiu would not be surprised even if he were to kick the bucket in the next moment. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Everyone kneeled down below. Only a few elders of the Xiang royal family with extremely high seniority, and people of extremely high status like Beigong Bailey merely bowed to him. On Chu Xiu's side, Mei Qinglian and Shang Tianliang had come. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian would at least put on an act and salute him. However, Shang Tianliang was looking at the sky and did not even bother to put on an act. Born in the Green Capital, he did not understand how a dying person could still sit in such a high position. If there were people in the same state as Xiang Long in the Green Capital, they would have committed suicide long ago to save themselves from wasting resources and implicating others. "Rise, all of you," Xiang Long said weakly. He did not keep them in suspense. He sat on the dragon throne and said, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to announce a few things." Hearing this, everyone immediately put on a solemn expression. Xiang Long had already weakened to this extent, so it was easy to imagine what he would announce next. Among the Northern Yan royal family, Xiang Li clenched his fists tightly. He did not even dare to raise his head. Right now he was the most nervous person here. He had waited for the position of crown prince for more than a decade. In these years, apart from the title, his power was no different from that of a crown prince. If not for Xiang Chong, he would have long been the crown prince. Xiang Li subconsciously turned to look at Xiang Chong. Compared to Xiang Li's nervousness, Xiang Chong seemed to be rather calm at this moment. Everyone wanted to be the crown prince, especially with Xiang Long's current condition. If anyone could become the crown prince, it probably wouldn't take long for them to officially ascend the throne. He knew that in terms of prestige and personal strength, he was not inferior to Xiang Li, but his only advantage was Xiang Long's love. Even if he, Xiang Li, had a great advantage, those things could be taken away by Xiang Long with a single word. Therefore, it was useless for him to worry now. Whether he lived or died depended on Xiang Long's decision. On the dragon throne, Xiang Long's gaze swept past Xiang Li and Xiang Chong. In the end, he sighed and said, "I've decided to appoint Cheng Chong as the crown prince." The crowd burst into an uproar as soon as he said that. Xiang Li felt as if all his strength had been sucked out, and he almost fell to the ground. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, lowering his head so that no one could see his expression. But in fact, the expression on his face was extremely ferocious, as if he wanted to eat someone. He refused to accept this. Not convinced. Anyone could be the crown prince, but why Xiang Chong? He had worked hard for more than 10 years. Just because he looked like his father when he was young, he could have all this? What Xiang Li was unwilling to accept was that his careful and meticulous planning had actually been defeated by a face. How could he swallow this insult? How could he accept this? Chu Xiao, on the other hand, felt that this was very normal. Because in the original plot, the one who obtained the crown prince position in the end was the weaker Xiang Chong. Xiang Li's power was indeed not weak, but he had neglected one point. For a great ruler like Xiang Long, most of the time, it was the father who was strong and the son who was weak. If Xiang Long wanted to give something to you, it was only a matter of a word. If he didn't want to give it to you, no matter how much you schemed, he would still slap you to the ground. At this moment, Xiang Chong was also stunned. His face was also filled with disbelief. Although he knew that he was favored by Xiang Long, he did not expect that one day, this favor would allow him to inherit the throne. After all, in terms of strength, he was much younger than Xiang Li. Although he had fantasized about this day, he did not dare to imagine that the throne would fall into his hands. At this moment, the other Northern Yan generals and members of the royal family were also discussing this matter. To be honest, they did not expect that Xiang Chong would become the crown prince in the end. Previously, they had always thought that this person would be Xiang Li, so they had invested in him in advance and befriended him. But now, at this time, because of a word from Xiang Long, the crown prince had to be replaced. This was unacceptable to them. Looking around, Xiang Long coughed, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He did not say a word, but after feeling Xiang Long's gaze, everyone immediately quieted down. Although Xiang Long looked like he was about to die, he had been in charge of the Northern Yan for decades. His prestige was still there, and not many people dared to challenge him in front of him. When the hall was completely quiet, Xiang Long said, "This is only the first thing. There are still a few things that I need to announce. First, I feel that the Northern Yan Jianghu is too chaotic. So I sent people to the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect to invite the eminent monks of the Great Light Temple and the Taoist priests of the Chunyang Dao sect to come to Yanjing City to establish a branch. With the protection of both Taoism and Buddhism, I believe that the Northern Yan land will be more prosperous." As soon as this was said, Chu Xiao's expression, which was originally watching a show, suddenly became gloomy. Was Xiang Long preparing to break down and rebuild? Inviting the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect was clearly to target Chu Xiao and the Zhenwu Hall. The courtiers present were not stupid. They quickly figured out the crux of the matter. This was also what Xiang Long was best at. The combination of vertical and horizontal. Driving the tiger to swallow the wolf, Xiang Long relied on these few moves to defeat Eastern Qi. In the past, when the Northern Yan was weak, they used the power of the Northern Yan Jianghu to attack Eastern Qi. When the Northern Yan Jianghu was stable, they brought in Chu Xiao to suppress the Northern Yan Jianghu. Chu Xiu alone was notorious, and there were not many in the northern Yan Jianghu who scolded the imperial court. Seeing that Chu Xiu was too big to be shaken off, Xianglong actually brought in the forces of Taoism and Buddhism to suppress Chu Xiu. The three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism gathered in Yanjing City. They could imagine what kind of scene it would be. Chaos. It would be a complete mess. If Xianglong was still young, they would have confidence in him to solve all the problems and win in the chaos. However, the problem was that Xianglong did not have many days left to live. Was he not afraid of getting into trouble by making such a big move? Before the crowd could react, Xianglong continued. At the same time, I have decided to give the land of Wei County to Jiangshan Pavilion. In a few days, people from Jiangshan Pavilion will come to Yanjing City. When Jiangshan Pavilion takes control of Wei County, I will agree to restore their country. The power of this sentence was even greater than the previous one. They didn't know how to describe Xianglong anymore. The forces of the three countries had already reached a balance, but now Xianglong wanted to create a fourth country. Was he not afraid of going overboard? Chu Xiu was silent at the side. He suddenly guessed what Xianglong wanted to do. Previously, he had threatened Xianglong in front of him. Xianglong had endured it for fear of harming the innocent. But now it seemed that Xianglong was really dying. Even if he wanted to endure it, he did not have the time. Therefore, at this juncture, Xianglong decided to stake it all on one throw. He put all the internal and external conflicts and troubles in the light. Everyone would check and balance each other and weaken each other. In the end, they would even reach a delicate balance. The enmity between the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism, as well as their worldviews, were not in the same pot. Hoping for them to coexist peacefully was more difficult than asking a pig to fly to heaven. Although the risk was great, Xianglong couldn't care less anymore. After so many years, which of the things he did not have risks? The court was noisy, but no one objected. It should be said that even if there were people who had objections, they did not dare to say it. This was where Xianglong's advantage lay. His reputation in the northern Yan was too high. It was so high that as long as he was alive, no one in the entire northern Yan imperial court would dare to say a word against him. At this moment, Xianglong had already instructed Xiangcheng to take care of these matters. Only then did he inform the crowd. This was not a discussion, but a routine notice. Go and get the 9-dragon seal to strengthen Cheng'er. We no longer have time, so let's simplify everything. As Xianglong's voice fell, Xiangcheng and several elders of the Xiang royal family left together. A moment later, they carefully brought back an exquisite wooden box and placed it in the center of the hall. When the box was opened, it immediately shone with a golden light. 9 lifelike coiling dragons were engraved on it, and a powerful aura lingered in the hall. Even Shang Tianliang could feel a faint pressure from it. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. He knew what the 9-dragon seal was. When the Northern Yan Empire had just been founded, all the master smiths of the Northern Yan were gathered. They even specially invited people from the Black Tortoise Gate and the Hall of Gods to forge this item together. The 9-dragon seal was not a weapon, but it was even more terrifying than a weapon. The 9-dragon seal that was forged by so many master smiths was not used directly. Every generation of the Xiang royal family had to give the 9-dragon seal their first drop of blood when they were born. This made it a treasure that only the bloodline of the Xiang family could wield. Moreover, the place where the 9-dragon seal was nurtured was not ordinary. It was in the Northern Yan dragon vein. After being stored in the dragon vein for a long time, the 9-dragon seal had already fused with the Northern Yan dragon vein. It could be considered as a derivative of the dragon vein. It could even be said that this item was the last trump card of the Northern Yan Empire, or even the entire Xiang royal family. Moreover, this item was not only in the Northern Yan Empire. Eastern Qi and Western Chu Empire should have it as well. However, it was not a seal, but something else. The power of the dragon vein was so strong. As the ruler of the empire, how could he not make use of it? Chapter 925. The 9-dragon seal was the national treasure of the Xiang royal family of the Northern Yan. At this moment, Xiang Long had taken out the Nine Dragons seal, not only to add the mark of the Nine Dragons seal on Xiang Cheng, but also to intimidate him. As for who he was intimidating, everyone knew with a single glance that it was Shang Tianliang who stood beside Chu Xiu. If not for Shang Tianliang, Xiang Long might not have arranged all this in such a hurry. A heaven and earth elemental enlightenment cultivator was too powerful, so powerful that even a dynasty had to be cautious. City Lord Shang, if you were to go up against this Nine Dragon seal, how confident are you? Chu Xiu secretly transmitted a message to him. Shang Tianliang stared at the Nine Dragon seal for a long time, then said, I don't know. This thing was nurtured from the dragon vein. What it represented was the will of this world to begin with. I am still not used to the way you fight here. The power of heaven and earth that I can use is not as much as this external object. However, external objects are external objects after all. It depends on who uses them. If it is one of the stronger true fire spirit refinement state cultivators, I don't have much confidence. Among the three dynasties, even the weakest Western Chu had some resources. Otherwise, they would have been usurped by others long ago. The Nine Dragon seal was the foundation of the Northern Yan, or even one of them. According to the Northern Yan custom, the crown prince would have the Nine Dragon seal on his back. Because the Nine Dragon seal contained the blood of the ancestors of the Xiang royal family, it represented the official recognition of the crown prince. Moreover, as long as the Nine Dragon seal was imprinted on the body of a member of the Xiang royal family, it would form a certain connection with him. As long as he was within Yanjing City, if he was hurt, he would be protected by the power of the Nine Dragon seal. This was to prevent the emperor from being assassinated. Although it didn't work every time, it had at least helped the previous Northern Yan emperors fend off many assassination attempts. Otherwise, with the extent of Xiang Long's hatred, he would probably need several martial artists in the true fire spirit refinement realm to guard him at all times to ensure his safety. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and suddenly sneered in his heart. Xiang Long was afraid. As the monarch of a country, Xiang Long actually used such a superficial method to threaten others. Xiang Long was obviously afraid. He was afraid that under his pressure, he would turn hostile. And in the end, Northern Yan would be in a mess. In fact, Xiang Long was thinking too much. Chu Xiu was actually a person who knew his limits. Even with Shang Tianliang present, Chu Xiu would carefully evaluate the strength of both sides before deciding to fall out with Xiang Long. The Northern Yan was Xiang Long's Northern Yan, but it was also the territory that Chu Xiu had managed for such a long time. It was also Xiang Long's territory. Once the table was flipped, Chu Xiu's efforts would be Chu Xiu would be's clan. Dragon. Chu would Long Yan clan of Long Northern Yan belong to Long and Long of the Northern Yan. Long Chan Su Chen Jin Long Yan, King Long and Xiang, he said. As far as he knew, Chu Xiu was not someone who would swallow humiliation like this. What was he thinking? The plan had been laid out. Xiang Long did not care about what tricks Chu Xiu had up his sleeves. When the seal was complete, Xiang Chang's entire body was enveloped in a faint light. After a long while, the light completely disappeared into his body. Only then did Xiang Cheng realize that he seemed to have really become the crown prince of the Northern Yan, the heir to the empire? Xiang Long said solemnly. Cheng, you are now the crown prince, but you are still young. In all aspects, you must listen to the opinions of the Northern Yan elites. They will assist you in governing the country, so I am not worried. I heard that you are very interested in martial arts. This time, I have also found a teacher for you. Everyone was slightly taken aback. At this time, Xiang Cheng walked out and brought in a middle-aged man with a sword. It should be noted that this was the imperial court. Even generals like Beigong Bailey were not allowed to carry weapons. Chu Xiu would not go overboard. Although he had a weapon with him, he had placed the heavenly war case in a secret space box. However, this person was actually holding a sword so openly. His attitude could be said to be extremely arrogant. But although this middle-aged man was arrogant, he was extremely ordinary in other aspects. His aura was restrained, so his specific strength could not be seen. But Chu Xiu was sure that this man was definitely in the true fire spirit refinement realm. The reason was simple. If the other party's realm was lower than his, no matter how well he restrained his aura, Chu Xiu would still be able to see through him. This middle-aged man was only wearing a greenish-gray coarse short robe. There were even patches in some places. His appearance was also extremely ordinary, and his expression was dull. To be more accurate, it should be said that he was indifferent. It was as if the Emperor of Northern Yen and all the experts in the hall were all illusions to him. The only thing on him that seemed more luxurious was the sword in his hand. Although the blade of the sword was not seen, the scabbard was made from the skin of a giant beast in the sea. It could be used to enhance the sharpness of the weapon. A palm-sized piece of the scabbard was worth 10,000 taels of gold. Xiang Long said in a deep voice, "This is Mr. Kong Dongming, the sword sage of the Eastern Sea. From now on he will be your teacher." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire audience was in an uproar. They all looked at Kong Dongming with astonishment. Chu Xiu transmitted his voice to Mei Qinglian. "Who is this? Is he famous? Why have I never heard of him?" Mei Qinglian said, "It is normal that you have not heard of him. This sword sage of the Eastern Sea came to the Central Plains when you were in seclusion. He is so famous that even Wind Sweeping Tower does not dare to give him a ranking now, because who knows when it will be changed again. This person was born overseas, and has always been traveling overseas. His swordsmanship is unfathomable. A month ago, he suddenly appeared in the Central Plains and challenged Yanji of the Storm Sword Mound alone. He defeated the enemy in 3 moves. He then went to the Forgotten Sword Hut and challenged the leader of the Sword Hut, Shin Baochen, and won. After that, he went to the Western Desert and challenged the leader of the Sword King City, Heavenly Sword Shen Tianwang, and won. He did not go to the Hidden Sword Villa. Perhaps in his opinion, the Hidden Sword Villa was no longer worthy of his challenge. In a short period of time, he battled 3 major sword sects and won 3 consecutive battles. Kong Dongming even gained the reputation of being the #1 swordsman in the world. He was called the Sword Sage of the Eastern Sea. However, it is said that this person's tracks are hard to find, and he has a strange personality. Other than the fact that he likes to challenge strong swordsmen, no one knows what he wants. Why is he relying on Xianglong now? What Mei Qinglian and the others did not know was that part of the reason why Kong Dongming appeared in the Central Plains was because of Xiang Chong. When Xiang Chong went to Jiangshan Pavilion to negotiate, he happened to meet Kong Dongming. Kong Dongming was not a member of Jiangshan Pavilion. To be precise, he was a guest of Jiangshan Pavilion. A swordsman also needed to eat. Other than practicing swordsmanship, Kong Dongming knew nothing else in his life. Where did he get all the cultivation resources, including his sharp sharkskin scabbard? It was all earned by being a guest elder of the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion. Moreover, being a guest of Jiangshan Pavilion was very interesting. Only when he was penniless would he come to Jiangshan Pavilion and be a guest of Jiangshan Pavilion for a period of time. He would leave after receiving a certain amount of monthly salary. Therefore, Jiangshan Pavilion could not do anything to this guest of theirs. They even offered Kong Dongming a huge sum of money just to stay in Jiangshan Pavilion. However, Kong Dongming rejected them outright. When Xiang Chong arrived at Jiangshan Pavilion, he happened to meet Kong Dongming. No one knew what he said, but he managed to trick Kong Dongming into coming to the Central Plains. That was how Kong Dongming consecutively challenged 3 major sword sects in the Central Plains. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and sized up Kong Dongming. However, this person still had a dull look on his face. It was as if he was daydreaming. This person was an extremely simple swordsman. He was even purer than some of the major sword sects in the world. In the past, the 5 major sword sects had fought for the position of the top sword sections. They had not given way to each other. They had even caused a great battle on Mount Fuyu, but no one had won. Now they had been challenged by an outsider. He had even earned the title of Sword Saint. This was a huge slap in the face. Faced with this result, the 3 sects could not say anything. Kong Dongming had challenged them in front of everyone. It was only a competition of swordsmanship. It did not involve the interests of any sections. Otherwise, with the power of the 3 sects, it would have been very easy for them to keep Kong Dongming, who had not reached the metaphysic realm of heaven and earth. It was just like the Sword King City's King Sword, and the Sword Soul of Wind and Cloud Sword Tomb. They had too many trump cards. However, in the face of such a simple challenge of swordsmanship, if anyone used such methods to fight the enemy, it would be a disgrace to swordsmanship. Since the death of Sword Saint Gu Qingqing 500 years ago, no one in the Jianghu could live up to the title of Sword Saint. Now, Kong Dongming was called the Sword Saint of the East Sea. Although he added the word East Sea in front of the title, it represented the recognition of many experts in the Jianghu. At this moment, Xiang Chong almost fainted from the surprise. He hurriedly walked up to Kong Dongming and bowed respectfully. Teacher. He knew what Xiang Long meant. He was looking for someone to rely on and accumulate power for him. Previously, he had been worried that although he was the crown prince, he was too weak. He could not compare to the influence that Xiang Li had built up for more than a decade. However, in the blink of an eye, Xiang Long had helped him solve all of this. No matter how strong Xiang Li's influence was, could it be stronger than Kong Dongming, who had defeated the experts of the three major sword sects and won the title of Sword Saint of the East Sea? Since Xiang Long had decided to support Xiang Chong as the crown prince, with his personality, he had to make sure everything was ready. However, in the face of the crown prince's bow, Kong Dongming only nodded slowly. He did not even say a word, as if he did not understand what this meant. However, Xiang Chong did not care. With such a strong master as a teacher, even if he was only on his side, the deterrence was already shocking enough. After saying so much, Xiang Long seemed to be on the verge of collapse. After saying that the court was dismissed, he left with Eunuch Han's help. The others also left with their own thoughts. The news that day was too shocking for them. They needed time to digest it. Chapter 926. In the Zhenwu Hall, Mei Qinglian, Pang Hu Tangye, Yin Bugui, and the other higher-ups of the Zhenwu Hall were all present. The atmosphere was slightly tense. The things that Xiang Long announced at the morning assembly today were not only targeted at Chu Xiu, but also a strategy formulated for the northern Yin Jianghu and eastern Qi. Balance each other and win in the chaos. However, Chu Xiu's Zhenwu Hall was the one that was affected the most. Bringing in Taoism and Buddhism would definitely affect the entire northern Yin Jianghu. No matter how much they tried to restrain themselves, it would be useless. Even Chu Xiu did not believe that he could restrain himself, let alone Taoism and Buddhism. Seeing the tense atmosphere, Tangye chuckled. Everyone, there's no need to be so serious, right? Actually, this is a good thing. Xiang Long's actions are equivalent to elevating our master to the level of Taoism and Buddhism. This is an honor. Chu Xiu waved his hand. Tangye is right. There's no need to be so serious. Xiang Long did this because he was forced into a corner. That's why he chose to use this move. The first to panic shouldn't be us, but Xiang Long passed down the order. Zhenwu Hall does not need to panic. Do what you did in the past. Just be careful of someone making a move in the dark. Then what do we do next? Mei Qinglian asked. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, just deal with the myriad of changes by not changing. Go and find out when the Great Light Temple, the Pure Young Taoist sect, and the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion will enter the city. As half the owner of this place, I'm afraid Xiang Long doesn't have the energy to welcome them. We have to welcome them no matter what. Mei Qinglian nodded. With Chu Xiu's instructions, everything was settled in less than 15 minutes. Just like when Chu Xiu was not around, although everyone did not quarrel, they could not make up their minds and did not know who to listen to. Mei Qinglian had seniority and status. Pang Hu was also on her side, but she could not replace Chu Xiu after all. As for Tangye and Yen Bugui, these old subordinates of Chu Xiu, their prestige was not small. It was impossible for them to completely listen to Mei Qinglian's commands. Now that they had Chu Xiu as their backbone, everything would be resolved with just a few words. Several days later, Chu Xiu casually sat on the city tower in front of the eastern city gate of the northern Yin kingdom. The general guarding the city broke out in a cold sweat. Although he also had the title of a general, he was only a city gate guard. He was not even as good as a lieutenant in the 5 armies of the state. He had naturally heard of the name of the governor of Zhenwu Hall. It should be said that in the entire northern Yan, there were not many people who had not heard of Chu Xiu. Of course, most of them were infamous. This governor of Jinwu Hall did not supervise the entire Jianghu, but came here to compete with him for work. He stood here and guarded the gate for a long time, which made him feel a lot of pressure. Are you sure that Great Guangming Temple, Chunyang Dao Sect, and Jiangshan Pavilion entered the city from here? Chu Xiu asked Tanya. Tanya hurriedly said, Of course, sir, you can question my strength, but you can't question my ability to do things. I used 3 banquets to get this information from the godson of Eunuch Han, the minister of the imperial palace. His Majesty does not have the energy to meet them now, so he arranged for it to be on this day. It must be the East Gate. Chu Xiu's expression was slightly strange. The godson of the eunuch? Isn't that still a eunuch? You invited a eunuch to drink banquets, and you told me that it was done? Tanya shrugged and said, No one said that eunuchs can't drink banquets, right? What if he likes it? Although his thing down there is gone, there are many things that can be used on his body, such as... Shut up. Before Tanya finished speaking, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. He was the dignified governor of Jinwu Hall, a famous diabolism tyrant in the Jianghu. Discussing with Tanya what a eunuch could do in a brothel. TSK, it was disgraceful. At this moment, Chu Xiu's gaze suddenly froze when he saw a group of people walking in from afar. Tanya also stopped smiling and became extremely serious. The people from Great Guangming Temple, Chunyang Dao Sect, and Jiangshan Pavilion were here. The pure Yang Daoist sect was led by 2 people this time. One of them was Shi Yunzi, and the other was an old Daoist priest with white hair and a white beard. Chunyang Dao sect's foundation was very strong, even stronger than real martial cult, but no matter how strong the foundation was, it couldn't withstand such consumption. Over the years, many older martial artists of Chunyang Dao sect had fallen. Even Chang Yunzi, the head of the 6 guardian immortals, died in the hands of Chu Xiu. Perhaps even the 6 guardian immortals couldn't be gathered now. Therefore, Ling Yunzi, as the sect leader, naturally couldn't come to Northern Yan Kingdom to set up a branch. Thus they could only send Shi Yunzi, a senior disciple. But even if Shi Yunzi's seniority was high enough, and he still had Ancestor Lu's divine weapon Chunyang in his hand, he was only at the real pellet state after all. So Ling Yunzi invited this old Taoist. This person's identity was also not ordinary. He was the last person of the Zhen generation in the previous generation of Chunyang Dao sect, Mako Mori. This person didn't live for a long time, but he was the youngest in the previous generation of the Zhen generation. He had already gone behind closed doors for life and death a few decades ago. Originally, Chunyang Dao sect thought that the other party was dead. They were preparing to wait for a few years. When the other party reached the end of his life, they would forcefully open the secret room and bury him. But who would have thought that the other party suddenly came out some time ago? Although he didn't break through to the heaven and earth mystic state, his cultivation had also improved slightly. He had made up for the hidden injuries he had suffered before, and his lifespan had increased a little. Mako Mori looked up at the top of the Northern Yan city wall and sighed. A few decades, a moment of youth. I still remember when I followed senior fellow apprentice to Northern Yan. Yanjing City was not so majestic. I didn't expect it to have the appearance of a big city now. Shi Yunzi said on the side, Martial uncle, don't underestimate Northern Yan. A few decades ago, Northern Yan was still suppressed by Eastern Qi, but not long after you went behind closed doors for life and death, Northern Yan had already begun to counterattack Eastern Qi. Although it can't be compared with Eastern Qi now, it is also one of the 3 major powers in the world. This time, senior fellow apprentice agreed to cooperate with Northern Yan, because he is interested in the power of Northern Yan. In Eastern Qi, the true martial sect is the state religion, but in Northern Yan, we Dao sects have not taken root here. If we, Chunyang Dao sect, can be the pioneer of Dao sects, we can also find a way out in the future. Shi Yunzi said this because he was afraid that Mako Mori would still look at Northern Yan with his old eyes. And he didn't want to offend the Northern Yan before he even cooperated with Northern Yan. When Mako Mori went into closed-door cultivation, he was not even born yet. However, he heard from Ling Yunzi and a few other elders of Chunyang Dao sect that this martial uncle Mako Mori seemed to have a bad temper. However, when Shou Zhenzi looked at Shi Yunzi, there was a hint of kindness in his eyes. He didn't get angry. He just nodded and said, "Don't worry, I understand." It was true that Mako Mori had a bad temper when he was young, but after decades of closed-door cultivation, no matter how bad his temper was, it had been suppressed by him. Moreover, when Mako Mori looked at Shiyunzi, it was like he was looking at himself in the past. Back then, he was like Shiyunzi, the youngest among his peers. His senior apprentice brother was almost as old as his master, but he was also the most favored. But after the vicissitudes of life, his master was gone, and his senior apprentice brother was also gone. The youngest one back then had become the oldest old monster. It was not a good feeling. At this moment, Shiyunzi pouted and said, "The people from Great Light Temple are here too." Mako Mori took a glance, and the kind smile on his face turned into disdain. This group of monks, it has been decades, but they still haven't changed a bit. They still like to put on a grand show, and they like to show off their face. Compared to the few old Taoists and a dozen young Taoists from Chunyang Dao sect, the Great Light Temple was undoubtedly much more impressive. Su Yan, the master of the Vajra department, one of the 6 major martial courtyards of Great Light Temple, had personally brought people here. He did not bring just one person, but all the disciples of the Vajra department. Su Yan had entered the true fire spiritual refinement realm not long ago, so he was naturally qualified to come to Northern Yen to set up a branch. In fact, in the Great Light Temple, there was another person who was more qualified than Su Yan, and that was Su Du. In terms of status, Su Du was the master of the 3 major Zen halls, so his status was naturally higher than the 6 major martial courtyards. Moreover, when Su Du joined forces with Chu Xiu to kill Yuan Tianfang, he had already shown signs of breaking through. It was just that the martial arts he cultivated was special, and he did not want to walk the ordinary path, so he deliberately suppressed his cultivation. Now Su Du had actually entered the true fire spiritual refinement realm, but he had not announced it. Instead, he had been in closed-door cultivation in the Great Light Temple, stabilizing his cultivation. Of course, more importantly, with Su Du's unreliable personality, the Great Light Temple was also very suspicious. If they let him set up a branch in Northern Yen, he would make a mess. Therefore, after a discussion among the upper echelons of the Great Light Temple, they were prepared to let Su Yan, the more reliable master, take over. Moreover, Su Yan had specially brought 2 old monks of the Jing generation who had been cultivating in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. They both had the power of the true fire spiritual refinement realm. The Great Light Temple's strategy had always been one generation managing the affairs of another, unlike Taoist sects, where the people in charge ranged from old celestial masters who were hundreds of years old to people of the younger generation like Zhang Qingzhen. After the Su generation of the Great Light Temple took over the Great Light Temple, all the martial artists of the Jing generation were almost old. Moreover, the Great Light Temple did not have the habit of taking in disciples on behalf of their masters, so they would not have a junior uncle like Shiyunzi. Therefore, all the martial artists of that generation retired to the Bodhi forest in the back of the mountain, and only came out to teach some disciples when they were free. In fact, the most terrifying thing about the Great Light Temple was not the martial monks of the 3 major Zen halls and the 6 major martial academies, but the old monks who had retired from worldly affairs. Only when the Great Light Temple was truly in a life and death crisis would these old monks, who looked extremely old, take action. At that time, it would be the time for the Great Light Temple to show its true power. This time, the Great Light Temple had sent 2 old monks of the Jing generation to guard the Northern Yen branch, which was enough to show the importance they attached to it. Chapter 927. The people from the Great Guangming Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect had all arrived. Naturally, the people from Jiangshan Pavilion were here as well. However, there were only a few people from Jiangshan Pavilion. They were here to talk to Xiang Long. After all, Jiangshan Pavilion was going to take over Wei County. Moreover, it was related to Jiangshan Pavilion's plan to restore their country. They had to pay attention to it no matter what. On the horses, 3 people stood side by side. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary aura. Looking at the people from the Chunyang Dao sect and the Buddhist sect, a handsome warrior in his 30s said, "Big brother, this time, the Northern Yan Emperor wants to help Jiangshan Pavilion restore our country. It seems that he has made a big move. Even the Chunyang Dao sect and the Great Guangming Temple have been encouraged by him. I wonder what he wants to do. The man whom he called Big Brother looked to be in his 50s. However, the vicissitudes between his brows could not be concealed. He was like an old man who had seen through the world. This man was the current pavilion master of Jiangshan Pavilion, Zhao Yuanfeng. The Zhao family of Jiangshan Pavilion used to be the royal family. Even the core of the entire Jiangshan Pavilion was based on the Zhao family. There were also the descendants of the loyal officials of the Zhao family in the past. Zhao Yuanfeng said in a deep voice, "Yuani, don't worry about the internal affairs of the Northern Yan. You only need to remember one thing. Since the establishment of Jiangshan Pavilion, we have been trying to take back the country that belongs to the Zhao family. The affairs of the Northern Yan Imperial Court and the Northern Yan Jianghu have nothing to do with Jiangshan Pavilion. Now Jiangshan Pavilion is only here to restore our country." At this time, an old voice behind Zhao Yuanfeng suddenly said, "Yuanfeng, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you are wrong. Since Jiangshan Pavilion wants to restore our country, then the current 3 kingdoms will be changed to 4 kingdoms. Whether it is Eastern Qi, Western Chu, or Northern Yan, they are all future enemies of our Jiangshan Pavilion. How can we not pay attention to them?" Zhao Yuanfeng frowned slightly and said faintly, "Understood, granduncle." Zhao Yuanfeng was a little impatient with the old man behind him, while his younger brother, Zhao Yuani, was disgusted. He was a member of the Jiangshan Pavilion Elders Guild. The so-called Elders Council, in Zhao Yuani's eyes, was just a place where a bunch of old farts gathered together. They had no ability, but they liked to point fingers at others. Although Jiangshan Pavilion was a descendant of the royal family, it no longer looked like a descendant of the royal family. Instead, it looked more like a combination of a sect and a family in the Jianghu. According to the imperial family's way of doing things, who cared if you were an elder or not? Since you were not the emperor, you should just obediently be a hired thug. Interfering with the imperial family's authority was a great taboo. According to the Jianghu's way of doing things, there were many masters with different surnames in Jiangshan Pavilion. They were all descendants of those loyal officials in the past, so they should be promoted to high positions. However, it was precisely because these old guys said that Jiangshan Pavilion could only be controlled by themselves. How could they hand it over to a servant? Therefore, a large number of masters of Jiangshan Pavilion were bitterly disappointed. They fled overseas or to the Central Plains, parting ways with Jiangshan Pavilion. Fortunately, his elder brother, Zhao Yuanfeng, was outstanding and talented. He had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm, and could be considered to have the qualifications to challenge the Elders Guild. That was why he stood his ground against the objections of the masses, and had been developing his overseas forces for the past 10 years. He had occupied many islands and recruited subordinates wantonly, allowing the strength of the rivers and mountains pavilion to rise to another level. However, in Zhao Yuani's eyes, his eldest brother was definitely comparable to those in the top 10 on the list. If it wasn't for these old guys holding them back, the development of Jiangshan Pavilion wouldn't just be one level higher. They would probably be able to reach the peak. Zhao Yuani wanted to say something, but Zhao Yuanfeng waved his hand and said, "All right, that's enough. Let's go into the city." Hearing his eldest brother say that, Zhao Yuani followed him into the city, feeling a little depressed. At the city gate, Chu Xiu stood there, waiting for the people from the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect to enter the city. Looking at Chu Xiu, who was dressed in black, standing with his hands behind his back, the soldiers guarding the city all shrunk to the side carefully. Su Yan and Shi Yunzi frowned at almost the same time. They knew the benefits of entering the Northern Yan sect to preach, but they also knew the consequences. Yanjing City, the core region of the Northern Yan sect, had always been Chu Xiu's territory. As long as they entered Yanjing City and started interfering with the Jianghu affairs of the entire Northern Yan sect, not only would they have to compete with them, but they would also offend Chu Xiu. Xianglong was getting someone else to do his dirty work. They understood that, but they still came. It wasn't that they looked down on Chu Xiu, but the conditions and temptation that Xianglong offered were too great. So great that they couldn't refuse. Master Su Yan, long time no see. Taoist Shi Yunzi, I didn't expect you to come this time. Has the Chunyang Dao sect declined to such an extent? Chu Xiu greeted the two of them with a bright smile on his face. That smile was extremely bright. Chu Xiu stood there like a harmless young master, but Su Yan and Shi Yunzi knew that under that seemingly harmless smile of Chu Xiu's, there was actually a lot of blood and slaughter hidden within. Shi Yunzi let out a long sigh and said in a deep voice, I'm just an ordinary disciple of the Chunyang Dao sect. I've never thought of myself as special. Since the sect asked me to do so, of course I had to do it. What's so strange about that? The disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect who came with Shi Yunzi all looked at him with surprise. In the Chunyang Dao sect, this little uncle master was not well liked. Most of the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect thought that he was pompous and did not act like a Taoist master at all. However, when it came to business, Shi Yunzi behaved himself. At least, he would not embarrass the Chunyang Dao sect. Su Yan shook his head and said, Official Chu, you should know why we're here in Yanjing City. We also know why you're here. Official Chu, you're a smart man. You should know that the main reason for this isn't us. The Great Light Temple has no intention of becoming enemies with you at this time. However, we can't help ourselves in the Jianghu. I hope you can understand. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, We can't help ourselves in the Jianghu. Well said. Master Su Yan can see it very clearly. Chu Xiu's expression turned grave as soon as he said that. However, I, Chu Xiu, am also a person in the Jianghu. Can I help myself in the things I do? The Zhenwu clan has been operating in the northern Yan Jianghu for many years. The order has been completely established. Now that the two of you have come, you want to destroy this order. I can tolerate it, but the entire Zhenwu clan can't. Su Yan put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Official Chu, I can only guarantee that the Great Light Temple won't start a war easily. Shi Yunzi, who was at the side, also said, Senior brother sect leader has already said that the karma between the two sides will be put aside for the time being. This time, the Chunyang Dao sect didn't come specifically to become enemies with you, Official Chu. Mako Mori was sizing up Chu Xiu at the moment. Back when he was in closed-door cultivation, there was no such person as Chu Xiu in the Jianghu. Not to mention Chu Xiu. Even Chen Qingdi had not shown any signs at that time. In the end, the world had changed in just a few decades. Now such a junior martial artist actually had the ability to stir up the world? Just as the atmosphere between the two sides was very tense, the people from Jiangshan Pavilion walked over. Actually, Zhao Yuanfeng did not want to have any dealings with Chu Xiu. Of course, Zhao Yuanfeng knew about the Zhenwu clan's viceroy, who had recently become famous in the Jianghu. In fact, he knew him in detail. After all, there were not many people in the entire Jianghu who did not know Chu Xiu. Jiangshan Pavilion only focused on the overseas region. It was not that they did not pay attention to the Central Plains warriors' movements. However, this time, although Jiangshan Pavilion had joined the overall situation, Jiangshan Pavilion's target was only Wei County. As long as they could manage Wei County well, they did not care about what the northern Yan would be like. Therefore, when he saw Chu Xiu and the others secretly quarreling at the city gate, he wanted to keep a low profile and go around the small door at the side. However, the Zhao clan's elder frowned and rushed to say, Everyone, don't block the gate if you don't want to go in. As soon as he said this, Zhao Yuanfeng secretly cursed. As expected, the gazes of the three parties turned to the direction of Jiangshan Pavilion at the same time. People from Jiangshan Pavilion? Chu Xiu said faintly. The Zhao clan's elder said proudly, Yes. To be precise, we are the Zhao clan's royal family. After I meet your majesty, it will not take long for us to restore our country. If you want to resolve the grievances between you and the Taoists and Buddhists, go somewhere else. Don't block the way here. When this elder of the Zhao family was born, the Zhao family had not yet been destroyed. Therefore, he was still contaminated with some of the habits of the royal family. He was not like Zhao Yuanfeng and the others, who were almost no different from the people of the Jianghu. They did things purely with the eyes of the people of the Jianghu. Previously, Zhao Yuanfeng had told the Zhao clan's elder not to offend Xiang Long. Of course, the elder knew this. Even if Zhao Yuanfeng didn't say it, he would still pay attention. The royal family's etiquette could not be forgotten. However, Zhao Yuanfeng forgot to tell him not only not to offend Xiang Long, but also not to offend important officials like Chu Xiu who had great influence in northern Yan. In the past, when the Zhao clan was still a royal family, it could be said that their words carried enormous weight. In reality, small countries like the Zhao clan's royal family could not have too much influence in the country. Therefore, in the eyes of the Zhao clan's elder, this Chu Xiu was only a northern Yan official, while his Jiangshan pavilion's Zhao clan was of royal origin. They were qualified to be on equal footing with the Xiang clan's royal family. Of course, not in terms of strength, at least in terms of status. Facing a northern Yan official, the Zhao clan's elder thought that his attitude was polite enough. In fact, he was even giving face to Xiang Long. Chu Xiu looked at the people of the River Mountain Pavilion, and his lips suddenly curled into a cold smile. Block the way? How dare a group of impoverished people, whose country had almost been destroyed by others, clamor here? Yanjing City is not a place where you can put on airs. Even if His Majesty summons you, if I don't want to let you in, who would dare to open the door? Hearing this, the Zhao clan's elder flew into a rage. How dare you? How dare you? Does the Northern Yan Imperial Court have any rules? Rules? When His Majesty is here, his words are the rules. When His Majesty is not here, my words are the rules. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura around Chu Xiu's body shot up to the sky and he directly punched at the Zhao clan's elder. Su Yan and Shi Yunzi were very experienced and hit at the side. Chu Xiu was a madman. Before this, they did not want to provoke Chu Xiu at this time. Since someone was willing to help Chu Xiu vent his anger, they were more than happy to help. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.